Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today. For this one, we are going to do another out and about video for you. So today, I'm in Hackettstown in New Jersey, which is in the kind of northwestern part of the state actually. And we're going to have a little look at this place behind me. So this is Man Skirt Brewing, which is a very small operation doing lots of really interesting traditional styles. And yeah, we'll just do as we always do. We'll go in, we'll have a little look around, we'll try some of the beers, and we'll have a good time doing it. So yeah, let's get started on this one. Always cool to visit little random places like this. But yeah, looking forward to this. I do like the name as well. With being Scottish, this did kind of strike me as being quite funny. And there will be, once again, a special guest in this video. So let's get started. Alright guys, so let's have a little look at Man Skirt Brewing. So yeah, I'm not sure how well you're going to see the building, but this is really cool. It actually is an old bank. It was a branch of the People's National Bank here in Hackettstown. But yeah, they've got this little beer garden on the side, which we'll probably do some filming in a little bit later on. But yeah, I have to say, this place is very cool inside. So yeah, you can see on the side here, Man Skirt Brewing. And if you just go up the side here, this is where I filmed the little kind of introduction bit. You can see it just on the side here. So sort of classic old school American red brick building. You can see the old night deposit thing here too, which is quite nice. And drink local, which is always very important. And yeah, there you can see, it's nice. So when you come in, you'll see Man Skirt Brewing. There are your opening hours as well. But yeah, you'll notice immediately, you get a little beep when you come in so they hear you. But yeah, this place is pretty awesome, I have to say. So you get this lovely big tall roof, as you would always get in the kind of American banks. They've got their bunting up as well for the Oktoberfest there, the Bavarian Czechs. You can see they've got their t-shirts all laid out, lots of brewery stickers down here. And there you can see the brewing stuff there, which we'll have a little closer look at later on. But you are greeted by the Kraken, the Leviathan, whatever you want to say. The bar is over here, and if you turn round this way, you've got the various kilts or man skirts as they're known here. This little space up the top is apparently a space for events and things like that. But yeah, oh, I forgot to point out, they do have some little fishies that you can look at as well, so that's quite nice. I do like fish tanks, I was obsessed with them. Oh, they've got some little clownfish in there too, which is nice. But yeah, there's a little quick look up the brewery for you. The Kraken is watching over you. And yeah, if you come up this way, you go out here, you've got the merch vault first off, but then the beer garden is up here. So you walk past what's obviously a little kitchen area, and they do have a bender as well, which I thought was quite fun. And that's one of the brewery slogans: no pants, just create beer. But yeah, your beer garden is out here. So yeah, you just come round here, and that's you at the top of the beer garden. So yeah, this is quite nice. You can see you've got this tent with all the little atmospheric lights and things. So yeah, don't block the driveway, bank property. You've got these gas burners too. But yeah, I guess we can go back in and we will see our special guest. So he's just sitting next to the bar. So we head over here. There he is, it's Mr. Massive Matt again. We're at one of his local breweries, so you'll be joining him with some tastings as well.
Looking forward to it, brother.
Yeah, alright, that's that. Let's get started again. My space is empty, so we need beer. Alright guys, well, time for our first tasting then here at Man Skirt Brewing. So yeah, the first beer we're going to have a look at is one of their kind of staples, from what I understand. This one is called Checks and Balances, comes in at 5% ABV, and as the name suggests, this one is a Czech-style Pilsner. So when this beer poured, it had about a finger and a half of a frothy, I would say, kind of slightly cream-coloured head, and it comes in this lovely stein actually. This one was done with the proper lager tap, which I was really quite happy about. But yeah, looks the part. This one, you can see the head is a bit kind of, it's got a bit more of a kind of bumpy character to it, but a wee bit of foaminess in there as well. But then yeah, you've got this lovely kind of rich golden colour to this one. It actually looks a little touch like a Märzen when I think about it. So yeah, remember the colour of your beer depends on a few things. One, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, length of your wort boil is going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugar's caramelised, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. Any barrel aging that you do or adjuncts you put in will also affect the colour of your beer too. But yeah, with Pilsners you don't often have to care about that. But yeah, definitely a little bit more of a kind of rich yellow, I guess we could say, compared to some of the others I've had. Not too much in the way of visible carbonation, but you can see a steady stream of bubbles just going up towards the surface of the head there, and you can see the brewery logo on the glass here. So I actually did miss out on a wee bit of an opportunity here, not wearing my Scotland football shirt when I was coming to the Man Skirt, the Kilt Brewery. But yeah, let's have a look at the aroma of this one then and see what it's all about. Yeah, this smells really nice, and what I look for in these kind of Czech and German style beers is authenticity. So yeah, for me this is great. It kind of gives you everything you'd expect. You've got a wee bit of maltiness in there, good little bit of sweetness, nice little bit of floral bitterness and things, and a little bit of a kind of oily, fruity character. So yeah, for me, aroma-wise, this is really nice. So actually, I would say, if we start off with the aroma of this beer, it's got a lovely little bit of a kind of, it's got a little bit of like a fresh white bready bread crust backbone to it. There's a little touch of woodiness in there, for sure. And you've got a little bit of a kind of wholemeal brown bready character too. Then you've also got a nice bit of kind of fluffy white bread sitting on top of that. In the back of the nose, you definitely get that little bit of Pilsner malty dryness, but there is quite a little bit of sweetness to this one actually. You've got that kind of oily McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing, or cookies as the Americans would call it. So yeah, you can smell that quite prominently in this beer, and you know, it probably has a little touch of like carapils or something like that in it, and that's probably the reason why this one is a little bit kind of darker in terms of its colour. But yeah, it goes together really quite nicely, I have to say, in terms of the colour. But in terms of colour and aroma, brain's not working today, guys. I keep having these brain farts when I'm filming these days. I'm just getting old. But yeah, malty-wise, this one's kind of what you would expect, but a little bit richer and more caramelly leaning. Now, in terms of the hoppy character with this one's quite interesting. When you sugar the beer up, you've got a good little bit of earthiness coming out of this one, so there's a little bit of that kind of earthiness in the back of the nose, a little touch of herbal character, but this one, it does smell as if it's using Czech hops. You know, the German Pilsner, just for a little bit of reference, the German Pilsner for me always tends to be a bit brighter in its green component, and a lot of the dryness comes from the actual Pilsner malt, whereas in the Czech Pilsners are a little bit more kind of floral and spicy and bitter, actually, because of the nature of the Czech Sats, Žatec, whatever you want to call them, hops. And usually they're a bit more kind of creamy and yeasty in terms of their mouthfeel and things like that. But the style, of course, does originate from the Czech Republic, the city of Pilsen. You know, and that first one that was ever made was the Plzeňský Prazdroj, or Pilsner Urquell, as it is known. A city that was part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, lived in by both Czechs and Germans. The original brewer of the Pilsner was Bavarian, but he was a bit of an arsehole and kicked out of the town after like 2 years or something like that, and then the Czechs brewed it. So yeah, that's that. But yeah, the hoppy character in this one is quite nice. Nice little bit of floral aromatic spice, lovely kind of bright, light, grassy sort of note out of it. And yeah, the way that goes together, I think, is really quite nice. So on the fruity side of things, it's kind of what you'd expect. You've got this kind of little bit of sultana in there, you know, dry white raisins or whatever you want to call them. Good bit of oily pear in this one for sure. And yeah, there's a wee bit of like a limey, sort of more citrusy, zesty character coming out of this. It's a really, really nice smelling beer, actually. Yeah, aroma-wise, this is absolutely lovely. And pretty authentic, actually, but just a little bit on the sweeter side of the spectrum. So let's have a taste of this one then and see what it's all about. This is the Checks and Balances, a 5% Czech-style Pilsner, our first beer here at Man Skirt. Sláinte, skål, cheers. Yeah, that's pretty solid actually. It has, this is interesting because if we're talking about Czech beer styles, it has the dryness you'd expect of the Pilsner and the bitterness, but it also has a little bit more of the breadiness you would expect from a Czech Letsak, which is the amber lager, and it definitely has that Czech sort of smoothness to it as well, which is really interesting. But this is good. It's a thumbs up from me. So, let's break this beer down then. Middle third of your palate, you've got this lovely kind of bread crusty backbone in there. So yeah, lovely kind of rich bread crusty backbone. Further forward on that middle third of the palate, you get a little touch of woodiness coming out of the beer. Then you've got a layer of like cream cracker sort of thing. Yeah, lovely little bit of kind of cream cracker sort of thing. Then you've got a layer of like sweet, like wholemeal brown bread in there. Then above that, you start to get like a kind of lighter white bready character. And at the back of that middle third of the palate, you start to get that really kind of dry, crisp. You get that really nice kind of dry, crisp Pilsner malty character out of this one. Yeah, so you've got that nice dry kind of crisp Pilsner malt coming out of the beer. And then as you move further forward, you get that nice oily circle coming out of the beer, which is, yeah, you've got that nice kind of oily circle coming out of the beer, which is where you're getting the brown sugars. So in the dead centre of your tongue, you can feel that slightly more boozy, oily, biscuity sort of thing, and that's the alcohol. But as you move further out from that, you get a little bit more of a kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity type character to the beer, so that's really quite nice in this one. Yeah, I think the way that that goes together is really quite nice. Yeah, that covers the middle third of the tongue, I think. On the back third of your palate is quite similar. Just remember the general trend that sweeter flavours come out further forward on the palate, more dry and bitter flavours come out further back. So yeah, on the back third of the palate, you do tend to get similar flavours to the middle third of your palate, just at different intensities. So on that back third of the palate, you've got that bread crusty character, which is a little bit drier. Same with the kind of crackery note there as well, which sits above it. The brown bready layer is a little bit lighter and more airy. Then the same with the white bready layer that sits above it, and you can feel some of the dryness of the Pilsner malt just creeping over the top of that there, and that covers the malty part of the back third of the palate. But then you've got the yeasty character just sitting on top of that. So the yeasty side of this beer, for me, yeah, the yeasty side of things on this one, you can feel that dense, kind of sweet brown bready character in there. It has got a little bit of an almost like peppery spice around it, and there's a bit of woody character, woody dryness in there too, and it's wrapped in a sort of honeycomb flavour. Then definitely on the back third of the palate you can feel the flavour is taller, and as you come further forward into the middle third of your tongue, it just kind of condenses down and squashes together that little bit more. And the way that that goes together, I think, is really, really nice. On the hoppy side of things then with this beer, we've covered the malty and yeasty side of it. In the back corners of the palate, there's a nice little bit of earthiness in there. And as you move further forward, it gets a little bit herbal, but then you start to get that typical spicy, floral aromatic note that you would expect of the Czech Sats, Žatec hops. That goes together really nicely in this one, actually. I really do like that. Round the front curve of the tongue, the beer is lighter and more grassy. So yeah, you've got this lovely lighter kind of grassy character coming out of this one, and then yeah, on the kind of front half of that, on the front of that, the front third of your palate, sorry, again, brain is not working, you get the fruity characters coming out of the beer. So yeah, you've got that bread crusty layer, brown bread, white bread, and then that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters roll their way out the beer. So let's look at the fruity side of things to round off the flavour. So yeah, fruity side of the beer for me, at the back of that front third of the palate, you've got this nice kind of, you've definitely got this nice kind of sultana type note, maybe a little bit datey. As you move further forward, it's got a nice kind of oily, peary character coming out of it. And then, yeah, as you move further forward from that, there's a little bit of like a drier apricot underneath, and also a wee touch of, that you get a more kind of fresh green apple note as you move further forward toward the front tip of the tongue. Maybe a wee tiny hint of like lime or something like that. You've got Kazbak hops from the Czech Republic, that have a little bit of a limey character to it. So maybe there's a wee bit of that in here, because the spicy note feels a little bit different actually, and the fruitiness also feels a little bit different. So it could be a little bit of that, but it could also just be the presence of a little bit of Carapils malt or something like that. But yeah, overall, quite an interesting Pilsner, this one. As I say, it's got a little bit of a Czech kind of Litsak, amber lager type quality to it as well. Mouthfeel wise then, mouthfeel-wise, this beer, I'd say it's kind of top end of light-bodied. Carbonation is really smooth in this one. It has a bit of crispness to it in the aftertaste from the Pilsner malt. But yeah, top end and mid-bodied. One of the kind of more oily Pilsners I would say that I've had. In terms of IBU, I think it's a standard 30 IBU, but you do get a wee bit of dryness out of it to the aftertaste, which means you have to talk about perceived bitterness versus calculated bitterness a bit. The malt, as I say, a bit dry underneath, smooth in the middle, oily and sweet on top, little touch boozy as well. And then yeah, you've got a nice, you have got a nice little bit of kind of oily, fruity character to this one too. But a nice Pilsner, this one, quite interesting, quite different from what I've had in this style category in other places. But I think we can leave it at that for this one. This is the Checks and Balances, a 5% Czech style Pilsner, our first beer here at Man Skirt Brewing. I think we're going to do 2 more while I'm here, and we'll see how we get on. So I'll catch you guys in a second with something else. Alright guys, so this is the tap list today here at Man Skirt Brewing. So you can see a lot of like really traditional styles that you're not going to see that often. So yeah, we start off Checks and Balances, 5% Czech Pilsner, Better Than Pants, an English bitter at 4% ABV, the Great Porter, which apparently is their flagship beer, 5.5%, Imperial Progress, an 8.2% Imperial IPA, Lederskirten, which is their Oktoberfest Märzen at 6%, Barclay Perkins, which is an English brown porter at 5.5%. You don't see that often. The Bean Counter, which is a coffee milk stout at 4.5%, Hackett Stout, which is an Irish dry stout at 4.5%. I do enjoy those, you don't see those too often. It's mainly Imperial Stouts here in the US. Then, yeah, you've got Clyde and Seek, which is a Belgian wit at 5%, Inigo, which is a Saison at 5%, Stupid Sexy, a Flanders Red at 6.2%, then the Fezzik Saison 13%, so a big Imperial Saison, and then you've got your Nitro version of the Great Porter at 5.5%. And you can also get some hard seltzer here as well, which is very popular in America just now, but I have to say, not usually my thing. But yeah, a really nice tap list here at Man Skirt Brewing, lots of different styles. So I think we're going to have fun trying all of these ones. It's time to go on to our second tasting now. So there you go. Alright guys, well, time for tasting number 2 then here at Man Skirt Brewing. So the next beer that we're going to have a look at today is a style that I very much enjoy, but one that you don't find all that often anywhere, and I think this is the very first American brewed example of this style that I will have ever tried. I couldn't say for 100% certainty, but I'm almost sure that that's the case. So yeah, this particular beer is called Stupid Sexy. It comes in at 6.2% ABV, and this one is a Flanders Red Ale. So yeah, probably Rodenbach is the most famous example of this beer, and I would credit Rodenbach with really helping get me into the more kind of woody Belgian sour type beers. You know, of course, one of the guys that follows the channel, Chris Contreras, he sent me the Lambic beers, and yeah, that really kind of got me into those as well. The Lambics are really, really interesting. But yeah, Rodenbach was one of the kind of gateway sour beers for me. So whenever I see a Flanders Red, you guys that have watched the channel for a length of time will know I love my more kind of malty leaning things. So the Flanders Red is right up my street. So this beer is a 9-ounce pour, which I guess is maybe in the region like 200, 250 millilitres. I'm still not so familiar with my Freedom units, but yeah, this one came out with about a half finger of a frothy, I would have said kind of fawn, ivory coloured head. It's got a lovely sort of kind of, I think to call this one a copper colour is probably right. It's got a steady stream of carbonation in it as well, which you quite often find with more sour beers. But these beers are really nice. You have to really age these in fodders to get the kind of little bit of oaky character and things out of them. But yeah, it looks the part, a little touch of natural haze to it, but it is pretty clear, and I do remember Rodenbach being pretty clear from what I remember as well. But yeah, it looks very nice, this one, in terms of its colour and things. I think to the naked, on the camera it looks a little bit redder. To me it's a little bit like a kind of dark, rich, sort of copper, bronze type colour. But yeah, appearance wise it is kind of what you'd expect from the style. Let's have a wee look at the aroma then and see what we get from this one. Ooh, that's nice. Actually, the first thing that comes to mind when I smell this is like buttery popcorn. It's got a little bit of that toasty, buttery popcorn to it, which is not what I expected, I have to say. It's a really nice smelling beer. So you can smell a little bit of the sharper sour character coming off this one as well, which is really nice. So yeah, the backbone of the beer, you do get a little bit of that smooth, kind of oaky character to it. There's a little bit of like a drier, woody note in there as well. Maybe a little hint of vanilla. And yeah, little bits of kind of bread crust and brown bread. As I say, you've got this kind of popcorny, like buttery toffee popcorn type thing. And with that, yeah, there's a little bit of toasty brown sugar for sure. Yeah, definitely some toasty brown sugar in there. Yeah, toasty brown sugar, definitely a little bit of a more kind of straight up sweet caramel. Yeah, sweet caramel, a little bit of like Werther's Original butter candy butterscotch. And yeah, a bit of a toasty kind of caramelly note with that, and a little bit of a popcorny sort of thing. So yeah, the way that this goes together I think is really quite nice actually. On the hoppy side of things, there's not too much to report, but remember when it comes to the old school Belgian sour beers, what they used to do with these beers was they would add older hops to them that had lost a little bit of their alpha acid potency. And you know, if you actually add fresh hops into the sour beers, it's going to take away a little bit from the sour side of things. And then when it comes to the modern sour beers like the Gozes and the Berliner Weisses and things like this, a lot of them use fruity adjuncts, so there is an argument about whether you should use hops in there because the fruit is going to suppress the hop anyway. It just depends. It's always interesting to ask brewers what their hopping mentality is when it comes to making these kind of sour beers. But yeah, aroma-wise, this one I think is really quite nice for sure. Yeah, so the hoppy side of things, a little bit earthy, a little bit kind of herbal, wee bit of lighter grassy note in there, and the fruity side of things on this one's quite interesting. I get quite a little bit of like blackcurrant in there, maybe a little bit of like candied strawberry, a little bit of red currant, something like that. The aroma on this one is really quite nice. Yeah, aroma wise it's a lovely beer this. It certainly gets a thumbs up from me. I think it's pretty damn authentic and true to the style. So yeah, I like this one. Aroma wise it's quite interesting. I think we spent enough time talking about the appearance and the aroma now. We should have a taste of it and see what it's all about. Let's get stuck into this one and see what it's like. This one, is the Stupid Sexy, a 6.2% Flanders Red. I think my very first example of an American brewed Flanders Red. Sláinte, skål, cheers. It's interesting. It has got a little bit of an impact kick to it, this one. It's certainly got a little bit of kind of cherry sharpness to it, which I think is really interesting. The cherry sharpness out of this really kind of stands out. Yeah, just from the actual flavour of this beer, I don't think this one has been... I don't think this has been fodder aged. You can kind of tell that this one has been aged in a steel tank, because it just doesn't have... You can smell a bit of the woody character in it, but it just doesn't... it just doesn't have, say, the smoothness or something of Rodenbach, and that's something you quite often get that if it's been steel aged. I don't see any kind of fodders or stuff around. They might have it in a different part of the building or something, but yeah. This one you can kind of tell it's steel aged rather than wood aged, and this is a style for me that I think has to be wood aged. But other than that, it's really nice. It's an enjoyable beer, this one. For me, sour beers are kind of tasters. They're not kind of like session beers, if that makes sense. Which is why I got the smaller pour of this one. So yeah, for me, let's just break this down and describe it a wee bit more in depth. So yeah, the backbone of the beer, you've got this lovely kind of, you actually do have a little bit, the backbone of the beer, it does taste a little bit woody, and that makes me wonder if they've maybe put some oak chips in it or something like that. That wouldn't surprise me. But yeah, you do actually have, on the middle third of your palate, there's a little bit of that oaky, woody sort of backbone. So there's a wee bit of that in here, a smooth kind of oaky, woody character. If you go further forward on that middle third of your palate, you've got a little bit of a kind of vanilla character coming out of this one. So yeah, a little bit of a kind of vanilla sort of notey note, and sort of vanilla kind of character in it. Then you've also got, on top of that, you do get a little bit of a kind of brown bready bread crust. There's almost a little bit of like a kind of Werther's original butter candy sort of thing sitting above the woody characters. So then yeah, a little touch of kind of brown bready bread crust. Above that, a wee bit of a wholemeal brown bread in this one. And then, yeah, a bit of wholemeal brown bread. A wee bit of kind of white bread on top of that. Then a little bit of a kind of toasty. There's a wee bit of a kind of toasty brown sugary note coming out of this one. Yeah, in the dead centre of your palate you can feel that little circle there where you've got the more kind of sweet brown sugary notes coming out of the beer. So yeah, there's that little bit of kind of sweet Werther's original butter candy, butterscotchy sort of thing going on. In the dead centre of your palate you have a wee bit more, yeah, it is a little bit more of a straight up like fudge caramel sort of thing. Yeah, Werther's original is spread further out, maybe a wee touch of biscuit there. That covers the middle third of the palate where the complexity of this beer really lies. Now the back third of the palate is quite similar. You've got the woodiness underneath, the sort of, you know, the back third of your palate's always going to give you a slightly drier flavour, so you've got the woodiness underneath, the kind of sort of bread crusty character on top of that. You've got the brown bready layer which feels a little bit lighter and more airy. Then you can feel over the top of that there's a little bit of a kind of you've got a little bit of a kind of more dry, the drier side of the brown sugar sitting on top of that. Then you've got the yeasty sort of thing. So the yeasty flavour sitting on top of the back, sitting on top of the back third of the palate there. It's got a more dense, it has got a little bit of that more dense brown bready sort of character to it, and it's got a wee bit of like a woody kind of note around it, then a little bit of honeycomb, and definitely back third of the palate the flavour's taller. Then as you come further forward into the middle third of the palate it just kind of condenses down. and squashes together that little bit more. So that's pretty nice in this one. On the hoppy side of things, it's kind of what you'd expect. There's a little bit of smooth earthiness in there, a little bit of herbal character, and as you come further forward you get the remnants of a floral note. I think they're obviously going to be using older hops in this, and low alpha acid hops such as, you know, German Hallertau or Tettnang or something like that in here. Belgian hops are obviously quite popular for these styles of beer too, and they give you a little bit more of a herbal earthy sort of thing. Round the front curve of the tongue, a bit lighter and more grassy. And yeah, I think that covers the green component. But yeah, the hoppy character, as you'd expect, isn't too prominent in this. Older hops being used in this, you can kind of tell. Fruity side of this one for me, as I said, when I tasted this beer, it's a little bit more cherry-ish than what you're going to find in Belgium. So the Belgian ones maybe aren't quite as sharp as this either, but like I said, I suspect that this one is steel-aged, maybe with a bit of oak chip in it rather than being like fodder aged, and that's the main difference there. That's the main reason I think for the sharpness. But yeah, front third of your palate, you've got a bit of like sort of oak chippy woodiness in there. And the reason I say oak chips is because it feels that little bit drier, not quite as smooth. But then yeah, you've got that little bit of like oak chippy sort of thing, bit of bread crust, brown bread, then the oily kind of fruity character. The thing with the sour beers that you should always talk about is the impact. You've got a sharper little bit of cherry that comes in when you first take the beer in, so sharper cherry in there, and that mellows out to be quite nice. And then behind that you've got a little bit of oily fig, you've got a little bit of yeah, there's a little bit of like oily fig, there's a wee bit of like black currant and stuff like that. Yeah, so the fruity character in this one, it's a little bit more kind of punchy and bold than what you will find in Belgium. This one, but you know, you have to think about this in America. They have the big massive sour beers like Cascade and things in the Pacific Northwest, so there is, the American palate is just different from the European palate, so having a bit more of a punchy flavour is probably a must for a style like this over here. So yeah, it's like a little bit, this one for me, it's almost like as if Cascade Brewing from, I forget if they're Oregon or Washington State, but it's almost like as if Cascade Brewing did a kind of traditional Flanders Red. It's just got that little bit more PNW kind of sour punch to it than what you're going to find from Rodenbach or Duchesse du Bourgogne or something like that. Yeah, I think that covers this one. Mouthfeel wise then, it's kind of like bottom end to mid-bodied for me. Carbonation's got a wee bit more crispness to it. It does feel like really light and clean, actually. And this is one of the things you notice whenever you get a foreign style brewed somewhere else, the water profile and stuff's going to be different. So the mouthfeel is where it varies quite often. IBU wise, I think this is quite low, maybe 10 or 15 IBUs if you're lucky. The malty side of things, as you say, it's got a bit of the woody smoothness in there, a bit of breadiness, a bit of sweetness on top of that. Then you've got the fruity side of things, a bit of a sharper impact than I'm used to with this style, but then it sort of juicens up and it's quite a wet fruitiness. But I think that covers everything we need to say about this beer. So this one is the Stupid Sexy, a 6.2% Flanders Red Ale, our second beer here at Man Skirt Brewing. So let's leave it at that. I'll catch you guys with something else in just a wee second. So yeah guys, this is one of the really cool things about Man Skirt, is because it's an old back building, they keep their merchandise in the vault. So there you are. You can see the really old kind of vault door here, which is pretty awesome. But yeah, you come in here and you can see they've got a whole host of different things. So yeah, you've got your hoodies over here, so as you can get your baseball caps as well. You've got these kind of metal growler type things which are nice. But then yeah, you've got your v-neck t-shirts, different designs and stuff. You can also get your mugs, no pants, just great beer. There you go. Obviously pants in America means something quite different to home, because yeah, you don't, well, I suppose it makes sense as well because for us, because you don't wear underwear under your kilt, but that's it. Yeah, you can get your tankard, a few other mugs and things there. There's your kind of girly t-shirt as well. There's this one here with the cards, which I think is quite nice, a sort of Vegas style if you can call it that. Yeah, a few more crowlers and things like that, and they've also got these t-shirts with the sort of Leviathan design on them as well, as I would call it, or the squid. Yeah, and they've got just the kind of plain logo ones here in different colours as well, which is quite nice. But yeah, a few more of the crowlers up there. I think that's everything. I think that is everything here. So yeah, there's some of the prices for you. I don't see any of the other ones kind of listed. Yeah, but that is a little look at the merch vault here at Man Skirt Brewing. So there you go. Alright guys, well, time for tasting number 3, and you might recognise this guy, Mr. Massive Matt from
Hey,
Massive
what's going on?
So yeah, this is one of your kind of staple beers, I guess you could say.
Yeah, it's a local brewery to me, Man Skirt Brewing. It's a home brewer that opened direct to his professional brewing. He has his own brewery here in downtown Hackettstown. It's actually in a cool little old bank and stuff like that. You'll see in some of the walkthrough videos the layout of the place. But this is their great porter. It's kind of their, I would call it their flagship beer. They hesitate to call it that. I think nobody calls their porter a flagship beer, at least in the United States. But it was kind of their core beer when they first started out, and I'll reserve judgment until the end. But this is actually, they do it in base and they do it in nitro. It's 5.4%, I believe, and yeah.
Yeah, no, because that was the thing. We were talking to Joe, the owner, a little bit, and he was saying, oh yeah, make sure you try both of them side by side. If you're going to taste that one, because I like that when you go to a brewery that you don't know, it's always nice to try the flagship one. And you'll see on the you would have seen on the tap list section that these guys do quite a lot of random styles and things.
Random styles, but very traditional styles. Like it's not. Yeah. There's not an IPA up there, is there?
There was actually, yeah. There's an 8.2% now.
Okay, but the fact that they have what do you want to say? 12 beers,
something like that, yeah.
And only one is an IPA.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Outside of that, everything else is. You know, they have a
Irish stouts,
saisons, Flanders Red, stuff like that.
Stuff like this. So yeah, no, it's a nice list. This is a cool place to come if you like trying, like going out of your comfort zone, basically. So yeah, great in that sense. So we should probably start with the normal pour or the nitro. What do you reckon? Nitro?
Yeah, let's go normal. Only because I think obviously the nitro is always going to temper a little bit of bitterness for me. So I like to go in, oddly enough, to the more bittering one just to see how it drops off from that. Okay.
Yeah, because nitro's not a big thing in Europe, so you need to take the lead on that a little bit, I guess. But you can see, colour-wise, it's what you'd expect. Lovely dark ebony rosewood colour. You can see the nitro holds its head a little bit better. Matt was laughing at me earlier because I was like, do you remember which one's the nitro, which one's the... which one is the things that you can't tell? So yeah, I learned. Yeah,
I didn't know that. I didn't know that nitro wasn't a big thing. So yeah, basically over here in the States and whatever, like a lot of they use nitro as a mouthfeel. Actually, it's going to bring a tremendous difference in mouthfeel, but it also dampens quite a bit of bitterness. So if you have something like this that might be a little bit, roasty, toasty, bittering, it's going to probably add a little bit more drinkability to it.
Yeah. Oh, it's that. I mean.
But it looks spot on what you'd expect from it.
Yeah, I mean, the obviously the head on this one's faded away a little bit more. The carbonation, I think, is a bit more visible in this. I don't even know if you can technically call it carbonation with a nitro, but yeah, because it's nitrogen dioxide, which is an inert gas, which stops us dying. So,
I like that. So what you're saying is, if you're in dire peril and you're about to take the bucket, just rip a bunch of nitro beers and you should be good?
Yeah, it should be fine, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I said nitrogen dioxide, it's nitrogen N2, so basically an inert gas, you can only really break it with electricity, very high voltage electricity. So, fixing nitrogen, that's called. A bit of chemistry for you there.
Rampant electrical science reviews.
That could be fun. Yeah. Right, so we'll do the aroma then, see if we get a bit of difference.
I always find it hard to do get a nice nose on a taster glass. It's so tiny.
This is definitely. I mean, as you'd expect with the nitro. I've only done maybe 3 or 4 nitro reviews.
No more milk chocolatey.
Yeah.
Kind of comes off a little bit less. Kind of like for this comes off classic porter chocolatey, but it has more of a baker's kind of thing going on. Where over here it lacks that little bit of. It allows the sweetness to come through, I should say, more over here. Not that it's overly sweet, but that's what
I mean, for me, this is like roasty, well-fired bread crust, like charred chocolate, 80-90% cocoa. Whereas this one is like smooth, more milk chocolate and like more like toasty caramel. Yeah. Is it meant to be a robust porter or just an English porter? Or?
Well, I think it's actually a robust porter because they had the English porter on there as a separate one, so I'm just assuming.
Oh yeah, the brown porter, yeah. That could have been interesting. That's the thing. There's too many things to try here. That's it.
Not really.
Well, depends how much time you've got. Yeah.
That's the other thing here. They do have a couple high ABV beers, but a lot of stuff does skew low.
Oh,
you know what I mean? Like they do have a 13% saison.
I was tempted by that. So we'll see how we feel. But yeah, so this one definitely more roasty, toasty, well-fired bread crust, rye bread for sure. The chocolate is like an 80-90% cocoa, charred for sure. There is a wee bit of like an oily kind of caramel in there, but you've also got a little bit of the brown sugar is it's more oily, like a little bit treacly, but it's quite minimal. It's not like a big part of the aroma.
No, not, and especially for you're referencing off of this, going back and forth, and once you get this, that's where you start getting your little bit more kind of desserty level of sweetness.
Yeah, I mean with this one, it has got the rye bread, but it feels not as dry, a bit more dense and fluffy almost. You could describe it as that.
No, I do. No, words are hard. I constantly talk about fluffy and density on noses. People you're like no, like a lot of things, like when you talk about sweetness and bitterness and stuff like that, you can't smell those things, but you can smell the perception of what that's going to be and stuff. And that's really what it comes off there, is a little bit softer, fluffier, creamier, which is to be expected.
Yeah. I mean, as you see with this one, more milk chocolate, like a sort of 40-50% cocoa. Toasty brown sugar for sure, but the brown sugar's I think the brown sugar's a bit drier in this, but it's a bit more prominent in the aroma. Yeah,
it's almost like I think that Nitro Edition almost adds, like, you're gonna look at it from just a flavor standpoint, it almost adds like an oatedness, like a milk stout. Not necessarily milk stout, but like a oatmeal stoutiness, where it adds a little bit of sweetness, brings that baker's chocolate, that 90% chocolate up to like a 60-50 split of something like that. That makes it a little bit more sweeter. I'm gonna tell you right now, I want to drink half of these equally and mix them all together and see what happens.
That could be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hoppy side of things, I think, is quite similar on both. Yeah. I think it's English Fuggle hops probably.
And it's ultra utilitarian. The hops here are meant to balance and it's bringing flavor to everything. There's not the hops aren't the show here. The showiness here is all about the malts.
Oh yeah, I mean, for me, I've always said this about when it comes to English beer, or English hops rather. English hops work better with maltier beers because they've got more of this earthy, herbal sort of thing. Fuggle in particular, it has this almost like
Fuggle,
ashy,
Golding, you know what I mean?
Fuggle for me in particular, it has this kind of ashy character to it. And if you put that in a golden ale, it's fucking horrible, to be honest with you. But if you put it in something more malty, like
old
a
ale, barley wine.
Yeah.
Honestly, Fuggle's my favorite hop when it comes to like, you know what I mean, barley wine. You know what I mean? That's like cash money, like or more old ale, but English non-open fermented old ale. I know there's kind of like old ale can span a bunch of kind of whatever. But. Yeah,
no, I would agree with that. I mean, you get earthiness, herbal, bit of grassiness, fruity wise. What would you say with these? They're actually very similar. It's the maltiness that's different. I think the hoppy and fruity side is very similar.
If I'm going to say anything with the hops, outside of like you're talking about herbalness and stuff like that, it really is just a soft like cherry note to me. That's what I get from it. Like soft berry cherryness is what I get from it.
See, I would have said raisin and like fig maybe. So it's a sharper thing. Yeah, so I can see why you would say cherry. Yeah, cherries. I've never really eaten cherries, so I don't use that
as a descriptor
quite often. Yeah, I was never into cherry flavour so much, but yeah. So we start with this one then. We start with the regular pour. Slange it. Yeah. Ooh. Nice. It's been a long time since I've had an English porter.
I think more robust porter to me, but actually I think they use this base and beef it up and do like a Baltic porter over this too, which is quite nice.
Because the robust porters would normally be like maybe 6% or something, and then the Baltic porters you're talking at least like 7.5. Yeah. Then you go up to the things. Because I mean, for those of you who don't know, the main difference between the porter and the stout would be the type of yeast you use. usually they ferment porters at a slightly lower ABV, which is why you have that lighter mouthfeel with a lower temperature. They ferment at a lower temperature, which is why you have that lighter mouthfeel. That's the main difference. The flavour profile is quite similar. But yeah, I mean, toasty, well-fired bread crust, bit of woodiness,
decent bittering on it, and a nice bittering. Like it's like when I talked about the malt being the start of the show in the nose, where the hops was kind of a secondary player for me. It's almost like equal parts actually in the taste. It could be. It's obviously the roasted toastiness of the maltiness kind of accentuates the hops on the bittering side of things and kind of props everything up, being that you're getting a little bit of bitterness from the astringency from the roasted maltiness, so that kind of marries well the way the bitterness kind of comes off. And then with that yeast kind of drying out things a little bit towards the end, because the beer is sweet, but it doesn't finish all that sweet, and it's not an overly sweet beer. It has a nice balance between the sweetness and bitter side.
I get a lot of like rye bread in this one. Like I get quite a lot of like rye bread, and then above that you get the chocolate. Further back on the palate it's more like 80-90%. It mellows out to be like a 60-70% cocoa further forward. Brown sugars actually. There's a little bit of like toasty brown sugar in the dead centre of your palate. It's not sweet on a brown sugary level.
No. The nose leads you to believe it's going to be a skosh sweeter, but I think it's really honestly the hops that kind of bring it up. Like, there's very much like a tannic, wet tea bag kind of thing going on for me.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I mean, I think the yeasty side of this beer, yeah, like a more wholemeal at the back of the palate is like a more sweet wholemeal brown bread. And I don't know if there's much more to say about it than that. It's a bit, yeah, it has got a little bit of a maybe spicy note to it, but yeah.
Let's start on the other one so you can just get it as quick as you can, like back and forth, and then we can kind of dive back and forth.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So malty side.
Yeah, see that bitterness is extremely tempered. You know what I mean? There's much more softness to it. And the yeast, it kind of takes off. It comes a little bit drier for me. It's still the same level of sweetness for me, but it perceptionally is a little bit sweeter because that bitterness isn't nearly as omnipresent.
I mean, yeah, for me, the brown sugar comes out a lot more. So I find this one quite a bit sweeter. And the breadiness is... Like the kind of rye bready base that it has is definitely sweeter too. We're getting little bugs visiting us now. They like the beer, but yeah, I think the rye bready character is a lot smoother, but at the same time a bit more densely sweet. I get more woodiness out of this one in the malty side of things. The brown sugars, as I say, are still there, still dry. Not so toasty, more sweet.
Yeah, and then, honestly, that's a byproduct of the nitro. Of it. It's going to temper, those kind of more aggressive, flavor profiles like bitterness, the sharpness, that more kind of roast, that well-fired you're talking about, and a blackness on there and stuff like that. It's not so much for me that sweetness, that rye flavor that you're getting is much more elevated, since that bitterness and everything has been pushed down and tempered, so it allows those other bits and pieces to come to a head.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. The yeasty side, I think the yeast takes a back seat in this, in the nitro. I don't think you get as much yeastiness out of the nitro.
For me, the yeast actually is more of a drying thing for me, and I think what the nitro does is adds almost like a, in music you have decay, you have a sharp drop off, you have a slow drop off. It's like this, I drink it, it's bittering, it's sweet, and then it drops off to like a dryness, and that kind of accentuates the yeast for me. For this, is a much more longer slope from that sweet portion of the show to the dry portion of the show, that finish, that it seems a little bit less aggressive. I think it's a really fun side-by-side because you get, it's essentially, it is the same exact beer, but in two different delivery systems.
Oh yeah.
It just shows you how much, just that alone. So think about, like, if someone has a bad draft line, or if a can has been sitting out in the heat, and like, just all these little variants that can subtly affect beer.
Oh yeah.
Just to do it on purpose and show it in this way is quite fun.
Yeah. I've always wondered, actually, I've talked about this in reviews with like Harry and Adam and stuff like this, whether the, maybe you can consider nitro as America's answer to cask ale.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely something that, obviously, Guinness is is the impetus for nitro being a thing. And you know, in the United States, there's always been kind of an infatuation with nitro beers. So it's actually been, you know, pretty much almost every brewery you go to, you find a nitro line on it. To be honest with you, did you see any other ones on your travels, or has this been the first?
One or two.
Yeah.
My first encounter with nitro was Left Hand Brewing from, you know, the one with the red hand.
Yeah.
It's
called their Nitro Stout, Colorado.
I think it was the milk. It was like a nitro milk stout or something, and it was. They're from Denver or Boulder, like that kind of area.
They're from Colorado.
Yeah, that would have been my first encounter with nitro, and then I think recently I had like a white stout or something like that.
But did you see any of your travels this time in the United States at any of the breweries you went to?
There was one. I have seen one that I can say for definite. There might be another two.
Oh, okay.
Just nitro for me. You know, I'm more kind of like, I'm into my lagers just now, and then my saisons. If it's a farmhouse brewery, then I'm going to try a saison, obviously, and things like that. So yeah, nitro is just something that I don't think about so much, to be honest with you. So maybe something I would explore if I stay over here a little bit longer. But yeah.
What do you think about this as a, let's call it a, what would you call this? Just English porter? Is that where you're lying as far as style?
It's somewhere between, like a London English porter. They're very similar. Or like a robust porter. The fact that it's got more bitterness is what would make it a robust porter. But I think the robust porters tend to be about 6%, and this was like 5.5%. So I don't know.
Close. Now, with that in mind, with those styles in mind, where would you put this as far as authenticity?
I think it's pretty solid, actually. Personally, I think the American takes on the porter and the stouts and the lower ABV stouts, I think a lot of them tend to be a bit better than the English takes on them. And I don't know if it's the American hops and stuff that would do it, or the different water profiles and so on. But yeah, no, I would say that it's the flavour profile is authentic. I haven't tried. It's quite hard in Sweden to find like a 5% stout or a 5% porter. You don't see them that often because it's all about it's more an American style brewing culture there. Even in Scotland these days, it's Scotch ales. You know, this is a style that I haven't tried too many of. I like them, but as I say, you just don't get them that often. There's not porters, stouts. A bit more in Scotland, but not so many porters. Yeah,
because your Scotch ale, your wee heavies fill that void where they're not going to brew this because it's going to brew Scotch ale.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, and even you do get a few like low ABV stouts from some of the more kind of traditional breweries and stuff like Williams Brothers and Harveston and Broughton and these kind of guys. But yeah, it is harder to find a porter. I can't even think in Scotland who does a regular porter, to be honest with you. That's quite hard, but I could name a few 5% stout kind of things. So porter's a style I like. As I say, it's one that I just don't review all that often, actually, in fairness. So yeah, but I think it's good. I do think it's good. I mean,
and I'll just say this, obviously there's is there any difference between England and Scotland? Aren't they the same country? They're all the same people, right?
He's been a very naughty man.
Yeah.
He's been a very naughty man.
When I think of porter, I think of England.
Yeah, no.
You know what I mean? So for me, not that, and then my joke was they're not the same country, obviously, but I would think you would have a decent amount of exposure.
No, not really. I mean, porter just isn't. As I say, I can't think of a brewery in Scotland who has a porter in the core range. I mean, the Scottish breweries.
But that's what I mean. Like when I think of porter, I think of England, and being so close in geography, you would assume there'd be a spillover. But since the Scottish ale takes over that thing, it kind of makes sense that you wouldn't have it.
I mean. When I think about darker beers in Scotland, it's mainly different types of shilling ales, as they're called, because we have the shilling scale. Over here, it's the wee heavy is basically like a 90 shilling, or the stronger ones would be a 160. But porters you don't. I mean, the stouts, my local breweries, there's March of the Penguins from Williams Brothers. There's the old engine oil from Harveston.
We get that over here quite a bit.
Yeah. I don't know if that was if it's more of an imperial porter. Or
I think it is. I think it's a little higher in ABV, old engine.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, something like that. And they've got all the different Ola Doof variants of that. So porter, as I say, it's just a style that not madly familiar. I like them, but I'm not madly familiar with them. Stouts, I'm a lot more familiar with. Yeah, it's an interesting point actually, something I hadn't really thought about. Yeah, we'll round off with the hoppy, fruity side of things with these ones then.
Give me one of these, some guy.
And again, for me, you would go. I would definitely agree with you when you go with figgy. You know, figgy with like I keep getting this kind of subtle cherry thing in my nose. So like whenever I get like a really well done Russian Imperial Stout, not that these and that, like a prominent cherry note to me is very much like needed to have that. And where this kind of has this subtle soft. When, like you said, you're not very familiar with cherries, this kind of undersweetened, underripened kind of cherry thing going on, which I like quite a bit.
Yeah, because for me, I would say, fig, I would say, yeah, it's got this oily kind of thing to it.
Especially when it's
the impact flavour for me is raisin, then it's juicy fig, and maybe like a little blackberry.
And I could get that blackberry portion, sure. That would probably be my bridge and connection with you with the cherry. But it'd be more of a, I would go cherry berry generic as a thing.
Yeah.
But I mean, the whole, like, you know, it's a dark beer. It's got this kind of, you know, caramelly thing. It's going to naturally lean into figs. It's naturally going to lean into dates. Something like this at a higher ABV with a bit of age on it would heavily lean into raisin for me. So I get where all that's coming from. But for me, it absolutely is the malt was the start of the show as far as taste and aromatics, and then the bittering is like the lead, or co-lead in the actual taste itself.
Yeah, oh, definitely. The hoppy side of the beer is, you know, it's earthy, herbal, wee bit floral, wee bit grassy on the front of the tongue. I think that's fair enough. On this one, it's like a black currant.
yeah, it was crazy.
I don't think it's that strong for me. To me, it's everything like here to taste, like all the aggressive parts of what you're getting over here. Not that anything's overly aggressive, but everything you over here is tempered. So I would say it's very similar. But it's like for example, if you ate some raisins and some figs, and let's say little pieces of cherry in a dessert in a salad. You know what I mean? Where you're introducing a little bit more, you know, it's a little bit of a sweeter thing, or sweeter over here versus a little bit less sweet over here. So it's one of those things where you have the same ingredients, but you're eating the things you're consuming it with are a little bit different, a little bit more umami. You know what I mean? Over here, a little bit more kind of savory over here, and a little bit more sweeter over here. So they present themselves differently.
Yeah. No, that's fair. I mean, yeah, for me, this one's just got a softer black. I always find black currants are a bit more oily. Blackberries are a bit juicier and sharper.
Yeah.
So I would say you're more black currant with this one for sure. But hoppy, the green component's the same. It's pretty much the same. Mouthfeel wise is where you've got the obvious difference. I mean, this beer is definitely wetter. Bottom end of mid-bodied for me. Crisper carbonation. IBUs feels like it's a little bit higher.
Yeah.
60-ish, 50, 60 IBUs, and then this is perceived bitterness versus calculated because the malt is going to contribute to that, so you need to consider this. Malt base is roasty underneath, smooth in the middle, dry sweetness on top. The fruits wetter and more juicy. Here, it feels more kind of top endish of mid-bodied. Carbonation is a little bit, is obviously very smooth because it's nitro.
It's almost like we were talking about on the look, undercarbonated, but top end much more kind of creaminess. So it's like, you know, like the carbonation is obviously it's going to be soft. You know, technically this one probably has a little bit more carbonation in the body because on a nitro beer, you're just gonna everything's gonna push it down. It's an interesting mix.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, smooth carbonation, all this kind of stuff. It's the same thing that I think it's more. The malt base feels a little bit more uniform in this one. When you talk about it, yeah, a bit of roastiness underneath it, and that comes out more in the aftertaste. But the rest of it is quite uniform, and the fruitiness is a little bit more smooth and dry.
Yeah, and that's honestly just a byproduct of the nitrization process. You know what I mean? And just taking everything and making it a little bit more softer, acceptable, softer kind of.
Yeah, no, that's it. I think that's everything we need to say.
Go and mix them together.
Oh yeah, okay.
For science.
For science, yeah. Heel dog.
Almost seems like the nitro just takes over on the other beer. It's very close. It's very, for me, similar to the nitro beer. I tried to get a touch more bitter, just a touch more bitterness that comes through, which is nice.
Yeah, that is the keg version wins over the the keg version definitely wins over on the bitterness side of things, but the rest of it is the nitro.
Yeah,
definitely. One porter you do need to try, I forgot to say this earlier. Hackettstown Brewery, one of the really famous Swedish craft beers, Kagen Stormax Porter, which literally translates into English as the keg or the barrel strong strength porter. So that's a very famous one, Kagen Stormax Porter. I was
high ABV, sounds like it.
Yeah, it's usually 8 or 9%, something like that. But then you've got all the other variants which take it into like the 10s and stuff. So yeah, that's a very famous Swedish porter, probably the most famous Swedish porter. So yeah, that's that.
Good
so,
time.
yeah, that's it. I think we're going to do one more here. I want to try the Irish dry stout because I've not seen one of those on tap when I've been here in the US so far. But yeah, this was a side by side and a mixing of the
Great Porter coming in 5.4% base versus nitro. Man Skirt Brewing, Hackettstown, New Jersey.
There we go. So yeah, catch you guys in just a second with something else. Thank you to Matt for joining, and you'll see him on some more videos. Cheers. Alright guys, so just another little thing. I didn't realise it was actually open, but if you come just up the side of the office, you can go upstairs to this little section here, and you'll be greeted by "Don't worry, be hoppy." But yeah, they actually have a little upstairs section which they use for events and things. They don't actually charge you to rent out this little bit apparently, but yeah, you can just kind of come up here. And this is very recently renovated at the time that I'm visiting, but you can come out here and you can see the just over everything, which is quite nice. So yeah, the Leviathan is up there, the Kraken, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, this just gives you a nice little view of the another part of the brewery. So yeah, there you go. Alright guys, time for our fourth and final tasting then here at Man Skirt Brewing. So the last beer that we're going to have a look at today is a style that I do quite enjoy, but it's another one that you just don't come across all that often back home in Scotland, the motherland, or in Sweden. So yeah, this just kind of caught my eye for a couple of reasons. So this particular beer is called Hackettstown. It comes in at 4.5% ABV, and this one is described as an Irish dry stout. Now, whenever I hear the name Hackett, and we're in Hackettstown now, I always think of Father Jack Hackett from the Irish comedy Father Ted. For those of you watching in the States that might not know it, do look it up because it's pretty funny actually. But yeah, the fact that it had Hackett in the name and it was described as an Irish dry stout, that was just kind of what stood out to me. And there are a number of really interesting beers on tap here at Man Skirt Brewing at the moment. But yeah, I thought, I haven't had an Irish dry stout when I've been over here this time, so let's just thought have a little look at it. So anyway, when this beer poured, it came out with about a half or 2/3 finger of a frothy, I would say kind of medium fawn coloured head. In terms of the colour of this one, I would say that it's a lovely kind of dark ebony rosewood thing, as you would expect. One or two big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass, a few little ones going up toward the bottom of the head there, but overall it does look very nice and pretty much as you would expect from any type of stout. As I say, this is 4.5% ABV, which is a traditional strength stout. And it's quite rare to find this in America because, when people think of stouts, they tend to think of, the 8% sweet stouts or the really high. high ABV Imperial Stouts. There's not too much in the way of visible carbonation with this one. One or two big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass, a few little ones coming up toward the bottom of that head there, which has incidentally just faded away to be a kind of thinner, more foamy layer. So I think this one is really quite nice. It's nice looking. So yeah, in terms of the aroma then, I think we can move on to that. Aroma wise, it's pretty much what you would expect of the style, but very, very smooth actually. For me, yeah, so for me, you've got this lovely bread crusty backbone. It's a little bit of a toasty, well-fired sort of thing. Yeah, a little bit of a roasty, toasty, well-fired bread crust. It has this sort of, it has this little bit of kind of, it's like an almost, you do get a little bit of like rye bread out of this one, like a sweeter rye bread. There's a little bit of a woody and nutty undertone to it as well, of course, but a lot of it, it's like this kind of smooth chocolate brownie type thing. So yeah, lovely smooth chocolate brownie. You have this lovely sort of kind of chocolatey, dry, brown sugary character coming out of it too. So yeah, on top of the kind of chocolate brownie, chocolate muffiny type character, there's a little bit of like, you do get a little bit like cocoa nib out of this. There's a kind of drier chocolatey character to it. Then you get the toasty brown sugars. There's a little bit of an oily sweet caramel coming out of this one. And then yeah, the brown sugar and the sort of chocolatey notes, that's where the nuttiness really kind of embeds itself in this beer. It's quite interesting. It's actually, compared to other Irish dry stouts that I've had in Ireland, this one is just a little bit sweeter, but again, generally speaking, the American palate is just that little bit sweeter than the it is just that bit sweeter than the European palate for sure. On the hoppy side of things, it's kind of what you'd expect. There's a little bit of earthiness in there. There's a little bit of herbal character. You do get a little remnant of a floral note as well, but there's a nice wee bit of grassiness just coming out of the beer too. Yeah, the way everything goes together in this one is really quite nice, in fact. So yeah, that's good. I mean, the fruity side of the beer, a little bit of like plum. I do get quite a little bit of juicy plum. There's some sharper raisin in there, but then yeah, black currant and blackberry jumping out of me, jumping out at this one for me. Yeah, really nice smelling beer actually. So as I always say, take a bit of time to enjoy the aroma of your beers. That's always half the experience, especially when you're reviewing styles that you're maybe not madly familiar with or you don't get to drink that often. So do that, definitely. But let's get stuck into this one. This was the Hackett Stout, a 4.5% Irish dry stout, our last beer here at Man Skirt Brewing. And a big toast to Mr. Frank Kelly, the late Mr. Frank Kelly, who played Father Jack in Father Ted. So yeah, awesome dude. Slàinte, Skål. This is really interesting. It's actually, it reminds me a little bit of March of the Penguins from one of my local breweries back in the motherland of Scotland. March of the Penguins from Williams Brothers Brewing Company. It has this real creaminess to it. So it's this beer is almost like a combination of an Irish milk stout. It's like an Irish milk stout in the beginning, but then in the aftertaste it shows you the Irish dry stout qualities. So for me, that's really quite quirky and unusual. So yeah, I really do like how that pieces together. It's a lovely beer, I'll say that straight away. This is really nice. Let's break it down then. Middle third of the palate, you've got that lovely roasty toasty, well fired, like black bread crust. That sits there in this one. Further forward on that middle third of your palate, there's a little bit of woodiness within that bread crust, but then yeah, you get a little bit of a kind of drier rye bready character out of this one, and then above that you've got the more kind of chocolate brownie type character coming out of it. So yeah, as I say, you've got the rye bready note, you've got the sort of chocolate brownie type character coming out of this one as well, and then above that you get the kind of cocoa nibby notes. Further back on that middle third of your palate you get the more charred, high percentage cocoa chocolate. So that comes out of this one really nicely. So high percentage charred cocoa chocolate. As you move further forward, the chocolate mellows out. It does stay quite high percentage cocoa, but you can feel that as you move further forward, it maybe gets up to like 60% cocoa chocolate. Remember, on the back of your palate, you're going to get the more bitter and dry flavours. Further forward, you're going to get the more sweeter things. So yeah, as you move further forward, you can feel the chocolate sort of mellow out, and you get a little bit of an almost very slightly vanilla type note out of the chocolate in there. It does give you almost a more milky chocolate character. So maybe I was wrong to say like 60%. It's maybe about even 40 or 50% cocoa chocolate. So yeah, charred chocolate at the back, 50 or so percent cocoa chocolate coming further forward from that. So yeah. On top of that, there's some really roasty, toasty, well-fired brown sugar. So yeah, roasty, toasty, well-fired brown sugar in there. It's like, that's quite nice. And then in the dead centre of your palate, you do get a little bit of a sweet, but still dry caramel coming out of this one, and that lingers into the aftertaste. And some of the nuttiness comes out of the beer there too. The more you drink of this beer, the more you do get the Irish dry stout qualities out of it. So yeah, on the back third of the palate, the flavours are quite similar. Roasty, well-fired bread crust. Then you get the kind of rye bready there, which was a little bit lighter and more airy. Then you get the kind of chocolate brownie layer above that, which feels lighter and more airy. And some of the charred chocolate characters just creep over the top of that. Then you've got the kind of yeasty notes coming out of the beer. So the yeasty side of the beer for me is like a very dense rye bread. Yeah, it's like a very dense sort of rye bready character. Yeah, very dense rye bready character. Then on top of that, you get the yeasty notes, and the yeasty notes for me, it's like a sweet, dense rye bread. It's kind of wrapped in a little bit of a kind of nutty. It's got a little bit of nuttiness to it, and it's wrapped in this kind of toasty honeycomb sort of thing. So back third of the palate, the flavour is taller. As you come further forward into the middle third of your palate, it just kind of condenses down and squashes together that little bit more. On the hoppy side of things, back corners of the palate, it's a little bit earthy. As you move further forward, it's a little bit herbal, and as you push forward toward the front corners of the palate, a little bit more kind of floral and aromatic round the front curve of the tongue. Definitely a bit lighter and more grassy for sure.
By the way, we should buy that big guy of beer.
So yeah, the way that goes together is quite nice. On the front third of your palate, then you've got the roasty, well-fired bread crust, the kind of brown bready notes, and then you get the fruity esters that come out above that lovely oily bubble where the fruity juicy esters just roll their way out with the beer. So for me, the fruity side of things, at the back of that front third of your palate, you've got a little bit of a kind of sharper figgy note in there, but that fades away very quickly. It's like a bit more of a kind of juicy. So you've got a figgy sort of thing. Then you've got the you get raisins at the back, juicy fig in the middle, and then a bit more of a black currant, blackberry sort of thing. This beer actually does have a little bit of sharpness to it on its fruity side, which is interesting. But I think that's everything we need to say about the flavour. Let's round off with a wee look at the mouthfeel. So for me, mouthfeel wise, this beer is quite for me, mouthfeel wise, this beer is quite it lies in that kind of mid-bodied part of the spectrum. The carbonation is smooth. It's got a little bit of a silky mouthfeel to it. IBU-wise, this one's a bit higher. This might be 60 or 70 IBUs, both from the malt and from the the hoppy side of things. The malty character, roasty underneath, smooth in the middle, a drier sweetness on top. Then you've got quite a little bit of a sharper, fruity character to this one. So this is a really interesting beer. But I think we can leave it at that for this one. So yeah, interesting stuff. So that's the end of this one. This is the Hackett Stout, a 4.5% Irish dry stout. It does get more and more Irish dry stouty, if we can say that, the further into it that you go. But yeah, in the beginning it shows you a little bit more of a kind of milk stouty character, but a very nice place to round off actually. There hasn't been, during my trip to the States so far, there hasn't been too much in the way of dark beers on offer, so it was quite nice to find a few dark beers on tap at Man Skirt. But I think we can leave it at that for this one, so yeah, I'll catch you guys in a wee second. I'll go out and give you my final thoughts on our time here at Man Skirt Brewery. So catch you guys in just a second. The Hackett Stout, 4.5% ABV, very nicely done. Alright guys, so when I've been here at Man Skirt, I bumped into Joe Fisher, who is the owner, and as you can see, he's well kilted out. So yeah, Joe and I were sitting chatting about different kind of beer styles, and he very kindly agreed to walk us through his little setup that he's got here.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
So what we're looking at here, this is the cellar side of things. This is the cold side. For those of you in the know about brew and breweries, these are our unit tanks, or our conical fermenters with the cones on the bottom, and that's where the actual fermentation happens. We've got our bright tanks over here, the BT, and they are numbered starting at 0 because I'm a computer programmer, so all of my arrays start at 0. And this is where the beer conditions, it gets cold, it gets bright, all of the solids drop out of suspension. And then down there is where we clean the kegs and whatnot. And if we turn around, we can get a quick look at the hot side of things. Our new canning line is in the way right now. So this is how the beer gets into the cans. It gets stored here when we're not brewing because we are a very small operation. We don't have a whole lot of space for things. But this is where the beer is actually made. So this is the hot liquor tank that heats up the water. It's a glorified hot water heater. The mash tun, where the grains get mixed with the hot water, and then in the back there is the boil kettle, and it does, as its name implies, boils the wort. We add the hops in there, and that's how we get from grain into your glass.
So where the magic happens.
Something like that, yeah.
And you were mentioning that this big tank that's right behind you, Fermentation Vessel Zero, this is for your hard seltzers.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the popularity of the seltzer has been such that we have this tank dedicated to it at all times.
Yeah. All right. No, that's awesome. So you told me earlier as well. Was it, how many barrels was it that you produce?
Annually, I produce about 500 barrels. A barrel being 31 US gallons.
Yeah, and that worked out at 58,000 litres a year. I think we calculated.
Give or take a few.
Yeah. So yeah, no, very small operation, and from the beers I've tried so far, it's quite nice because you still get that little bit of like homebrewedy rawness to the beers. It's like when you go to Czech and you drink these kind of unpasteurized lagers and things, you've got more of that bready, yeasty character in the beers.
Yeah, and, you know, I actually appreciate you noting that. One of the things that I like about the way we do the beers is you're getting a living product. We're not filtering the beer, we're not sterilizing the beer in any way or pasteurizing the beer. You are getting a living brewed product, and that excites me to be able to get that in people's hands.
All right, yeah, no, exactly. So, if you had to pick a favourite style of lager and a favourite style of ale, could you do it?
Of the ones that I make, or just across the board?
Across the board, then.
Across the board, I'm going to drink a Pilsner every single time. I love it. It's like a pure essence of what a beer should be to me. You know, you taste the grain, you taste the hops, you taste the water character. It's just, it's wonderful. And if I'm picking an ale, oh, man, so many to choose from. Probably a Belgian. I love pretty much anything in a Belgian strain of ale. They're just so interesting and so varied across the board that there's always something new to find.
All right, that's a good answer, yeah. So if you had to pick a beer, you know, if there's maybe 2 or 3 beers of your own that people have to try, what would you say?
Oh gosh, well the checks and balances being a Czech style Pilsner, probably the beer I'm most proud of. Again, as being a brewer, I can appreciate a beer like that. There's nowhere to hide behind. You can't just like bury it in hops or bury it in fruit. You're just making a pure beer and being able to do that right, I love it. And then my newest flagship beer, Clyde and Seek, is Belgian wit beer.
Okay.
And I was never big on Belgian wit beers. They often end up either cloyingly sweet or out of balance, and I feel like, obviously, I feel like I did a good job with it, getting the coriander and the orange peel balanced in there with the grain bill and the hops, and I love it.
Yeah, interesting. Because the sort of Matt was telling me the flagship beer. A lot of people consider the porter your flagship beer. Yeah,
it is. The porter's the beer I'm probably most well known for. I originally brewed the porter because very few breweries are doing a decent porter, and I feel like the world needs more of it. The same reason that I do my Better Than Pants and my Best Bitter. So few American breweries are doing a really good Best Bitter, if at all, and I thought that we need more.
Yeah, no, I have to say that, just for reference, guys, we are here on the 19th of September 2023, and yeah, like I've said when we looked at the tap list earlier in the video, there are quite a few sort of random styles here that I've not tried American brewed before, actually, so that was quite a cool thing about coming here, because you said you like to do the traditional styles that aren't as well known.
In fact, right over there at FV2 is an alt beer.
Oh,
which
yeah.
is a style that I think I've only had one commercial example of double bag.
Oh,
I think
okay.
It's an alt beer.
Yeah.
And it's the only one I've ever seen out in the wild, so I'm pretty excited to have that out as well.
Yeah, I actually don't think I've tried an American alt beer before, an American brewed one. So yeah, for those of you who don't know, that style comes from Dusseldorf. It is. Hovels is probably the most widely available Dusseldorf alt beer, or Diebels maybe would be the other one, actually.
I've never had either.
Yeah, all right, well, something that America needs to fix, I guess. But yeah,
I couldn't agree more.
Exactly. But no, it's a shame I love alt beers. Shame I wasn't here when that one was available, but what can you do?
Well, I mean, you know the brewer now, so maybe we can sample a little bit right from the tank. It has been chilling.
Oh, that might be a shout. Might be a tasting together, actually. We could do that. All right. Okay, well, guys, we'll pause this little segment of the video, and then I guess we'll have a little taste of the alt beer, which you'll see at some point in the video. I need to edit this thing together later. But thank you to Joe for his time and showing us through, and he put his kilt on specially. So, yeah, that's that. Catch you guys in just a second with something else. Alright guys, little kind of bonus review here. So Joe very kindly poured one of the beers out of the tank for us, so you can introduce the beer, yes?
Yeah, this is a German alt beer, which is a style that I know I had never heard of before opening a brewery. So I brewed it for the first time way back in the day when I quit my day job to do this full time. That was probably 2017, give or take a little bit. And as a programmer, I would use Alt F4 to close the window on my work. So Alt F4 closed the window on my day job. And
so this is the name?
This is the name. It is Alt F4.
And your anniversary is like next month, right?
October 3rd. Yeah. It's our 8-year anniversary.
Yeah, nice.
Very excited about that.
Yeah.
So this is the alt beer style, and you probably actually know more about the alt beer style than I do. But my understanding is the reason it's called alt beer is it's an old beer from a time when they were using ale yeast predominantly instead of lager yeast in Germany.
Yeah, because the alt beer as a style, it's it's an ale, but it's fermented at a lower temperature. So the same with Kolsch. Kolsch is also an ale. Lager, of course, is the most prominent beer type in Germany, if we can call it that.
And isn't there a bit of a war between alt beer and Kolsch on the two sides of the Rhone there? The Kolsch from Cologne and the alt beer from Düsseldorf?
You've got the Dortmunder Helles that's in there as well as the other one. So these three cities, you've got the big football teams, BVB, Dortmund, FC Köln, and then Fortuna Düsseldorf as well. So that makes it even worse. So yeah.
All right. Well, so this is the beer has finished fermenting. And we've chilled it down to start precipitating solids out of it so that I can move it to the bright tank to finish getting clean and carbonated. So this is uncarbonated but fully fermented and alcoholic and ready to drink.
So like if you're gonna do like say your pills, but how long from brew date to tap? How long is the same? Similar? Is the lager a little bit longer?
The lager takes significantly longer. So this beer has been in the primary fermenter for 14 days, and it's been cooling for a couple of days, and then it's going to move into directly into the bright tank.
So like 3 weeks.
Graded glass. Yep. My Czech Pilsner, that's usually up to 3 weeks of primary fermentation, and that's when I'll do a diacetyl rest, bring it up to temperature a little, bring it up to like 70 degrees to let the yeast clean up some of the precursors to that buttery diacetyl flavor that we don't want. And then I'll cool it down to about 40 degrees and let it lager for however much time I have before I need it. Usually at least a few weeks if I can get away with it. Sometimes a week or two if time crunches are there, you know, you have to make business decisions. But I do my best not to sacrifice quality for that.
For like 6 weeks?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I was curious about that.
I mean, I will say, I actually, it's funny to find this one now, because just before I came to the States this time, I actually reviewed a bunch of Dusseldorf Alp beers.
Oh, wow.
So I found one of the websites at home and imported a load of them, and it smells pretty damn authentic. Like I was saying earlier, it's is this Northern Brewer that's in here?
You're going to ask me that question? I don't remember.
Ah, okay.
But almost certainly, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I will say it does smell authentic. What you want from this style is like, you know, pumpernickel bread, little bit of bread crust, you know, either an oily or a slightly toasty brown sugar, you know, wee bit of earthiness, wee bit of herbal, and then the grassiness, and you get all of that. The fruits are, you know, blackcurrant maybe, yeah, like a sort of blackcurranty sultana type note, I would say, yeah.
Yeah, really, I mean, fruity-wise, I would still lean into, I mean, you know, it's actually kind of like a lighter figgy, you know what I mean? Not necessarily going all that direction, but just like a lighter figgy, like almost to the point where you're like, I would feel like, I don't want you to know more about it than me, but it was almost like you want to make like an English style or German style kind of like high ABV beer. This would be your second running kind of beer off of that, like a super high gravity beer, and then just do like, you know, a second running of it and get that kind of thing. So it's all black, a lot of like Marisade or something richer and darker. What malts do you put in here?
This is, there's a lot of Munich malt in here, some Vienna malt, and I think there's a little bit of Pilsner malt in there.
Okay.
That's interesting. Yeah.
But I do my best to source all my malts from their home countries. Like this is Best Malt, which is a German maltster.
Because it's interesting for me, you can taste it, the Vienna, and this is a bit more obvious than some of the other ones, because Vienna gives you that, the Vienna lagers, you'd be surprised when you try the ones from Vienna, the rye bread, the dryness of the rye bread is like really obvious, and you get a little bit of that in here. But then above this one you get the pumpernickel bread, and you get a wee bit of toasty brown sugar and like an oil, like a mix of sort of caramel. There's a German sweet, I don't know if you get Werther's,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's got a little bit of that going on.
There is some fairly darkly roasted caramel malts in here as well.
No, okay. Makes sense,
Helps a little bit of body. Like I get a little like a candy-like sweetness right on the nose. And then it dries out on the palate, which it's like my ideal character for a beer.
So you're saying you brewed this one time before, and you brewed it pretty much like when you left your jobs to work here full time. Like, how long ago was that compared to when you opened the brewery? You know what I mean?
Like how long was I doing both jobs?
When's the last time you brewed it? Basically,
Oh, that's a really good question. I brewed it twice, I believe. So the first time I brewed it was like 2017. And then the next time would have been maybe a year later, like 2018. So it's been a good 5 years.
So it's been 5 years.
Yeah.
Is it still exactly the same beer, or did you?
It is. It's exactly the same beer. Yep. This is one of the beers that I haven't tinkered much with.
Yeah. I was curious.
Oh, that's interesting, yeah. It's quite, the thing is, it is very much, you've seen the setup already in the video, it's very much like Brauhaus. It has I always talk about the German Brauhaus beers and the little bit of rawness they have, the unpasteurized kind of thing. You can kind of taste that in this beer. It has that little bit more of like the creamy, yeasty sort of thing. And most of the Alp beers that you're going to find outside of Dusseldorf will be a bit more industrial. They'll feel cleaner. They've been filtered, all this kind of thing. This is kind of the raw deal that you're going to get. A lot of the Dusseldorf Alp beer breweries, their original breweries in the centre of the city are now their Braustube. They're like restaurants. So there's about 7 or 8 of them. actually, and the restaurants were all in the Altstadt in the town. So yeah, the original brewery is now a restaurant. But back in the day, this is kind of what they would have been like. A lot of them now, as I say, are clean. They're a lot cleaner than this one is, if that makes sense. But you do have the little breweries around the town that are, newer, doing them, and they taste like this.
Well, that's always a thing that a business owner will struggle with, because you filter, you pasteurize your beer. The beer is going to last longer. It's going to be more shelf stable, but you lose some of the life. You lose some of the heart, I think, of the product.
And this is it's going to drink similar. It's going to be quite a bit different once it carves up.
Yes.
Mouthfeel will change. The way that kind of comes off and all those kind of things. That's the thing too. What we're drinking right now isn't carbonated. So
it's not the finished product.
Right. And the carbonation always gives you a little of that acidic tang. Yeah. That cuts through the sweetness a little bit too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, for me, the hoppy side, bit earthy, a little bit woody from, I do suspect, Northern Brewer.
Almost certainly.
Yeah.
It's my favorite German.
Oh, yeah. So earthy, bit woody and herbal. Not much floral character yet. That will come with the carbonation, but like a wet grassiness on the front of the tongue. The fruity side, like oily pear, sultana, wee bit of like a red currant, maybe, something like that.
Yeah, I still lean in that kind of berry thing. I think that's pretty much. I think like a lot of the beers I have from here have like this kind of berry characters for me more than anything else. It's not like over it's not a sweet kind of tart or anything like blueberry. It's like you said, like raspberry, or even to a certain extent like some kind of soft kind of a cherry characteristic. More in the darker beers, but that's where I'm at.
Well, this is another interesting thing, because I found and this is just a point of reference thing. Matt and I obviously you try lots of beers from all over the States, I'll try them over Europe. Raspberries in America for me are nowhere near as tart as they are at home. The blueberries are softer. And it's chemistry, it's your water profile, your soil profile, that's going to affect what you get. It's the same as I've spoken about in many videos. The American grains are sweeter than the European grains. We were talking about this earlier. The German lagers are drier than the American ones. The American ones are wetter, and that's probably a mix of grain type and the water profile. So you'll get wee differences like that. And I think this beer to me, it has a bit more yeastiness to it than the alt beers I've tried. So that's kind of interesting too.
And also possible because it hasn't been fully crashed, there may actually be more yeast in suspension than there will be in the final product.
Because it came straight from the fermentation tank, not even the break tank.
Right. So you notice, when you poured this, he actually poured out probably a liter or two before you actually poured what's in the glass. And what's in the glass. Make sure anything sitting around down there didn't come out.
Anything else we should say about this one?
Well, I think we've said all that needs to be said.
All right.
Well, maybe that you should come and visit us in a few weeks when it's on tap.
Oh, yeah. So we're here on the 19th of September. It'll be on tap.
We're going to have it on tap by our Oktoberfest weekend, which starts on the 29th.
All right. Well, we'll see when the video gets published. We need to edit this together and things, but we'll try and get it out there quite quickly. And well, thank you again to Joe for his time. And thank you for taking this, letting us try another unusual style.
Thank you for giving me an excuse. I appreciate it.
All right, that's a little bonus review for you guys. We'll get back to the main video in a wee second. Cheers. So guys, as you always get in American breweries, you've got a fridge with lovely things that you can take away. So your Man Skirt beer to go. So there you can see on the top shelf here we've got Checks and Balances, a Czech style Pilsner, Better Than Pants, an English Pale Ale. That should be a Scotch Ale. I think that name's a little bit more suited to a Scotch Ale, I have to say. Clyde and Seek, a Belgian wit beer with coriander. More of the same over here. Then if you come down here, you've got the Great Porter, which apparently is their flagship beer. You've got the Coffee Milk Stout as well. Then Imperial Progress, an IPA. Same ones over here. Down on the third shelf, you've got the Hackettstown, which is their Irish Stout. The Lereskirten, which is a Märzen. The Stupid Sexy, which is their Flanders Red. Same over here. And then you've got single cans. So you can actually buy single cans to take away, which is quite nice. And they've also got down here a few special beers here. I think these are just the very kind of small batch. Oh no, sorry, these are the hard seltzers. I thought these were going to be the little small batch things, and you can get a wee bit of Sprite and stuff like that if you really want to, and some root beer. Don't think I've ever tried root beer. But yeah, that's a nice little selection of stuff here in the takeaway fridge at Man Skirt Brewing. So there you are. Plenty of good beer to go. Alright guys, well that is the end of my time then here at Man Skirt Brewing in Hackettstown in New Jersey. So yeah, we ended up staying here for maybe about 4 hours, which was really fun actually. It didn't feel like it was that long, but yeah, we got to talk to a load of different people, some of the locals, the bartenders, and we also got to meet Joe, the main man behind the company, which was great. Lovely, lovely dude. So over the course of this video, we tried the Czech Pilsner, which was really interesting, a cross between a Pilsner and a sort of Czech Letsak in my opinion. Then I went on to try the Flanders Red Ale, which apparently was brewed with a Philly sour yeast. It's not a style that I'm not madly familiar with. I know Philly sours are fairly popular here in the US, but as I say, not a style that's made it over to Europe all that much. But yeah, then we went on and tried a regular pour versus a nitro pour of their kind of flagship porter, the Grand Porter if I remember the name correctly, and that was really interesting. It was quite cool to film that with Matt. And then we finished off with a look at the Irish Stout, which I thought was really good. It started off a little bit more like a milk stout, but then became, yeah, more and more of an Irish dry stout as we went on. And then we had a little look at an alt beer, which had not been released yet, with Joe the brewer. And Joe was very kind with his time. He took me around the brewery equipment and things like that. And then afterwards, he actually brought out a few cans of his own beer, and we sat and drank those and chatted a little bit. So yeah, really nice dude. He actually showed me a number of his recipes on his computer as well, which was quite interesting. He was saying he heard me reviewing the Flanders Red Ale and sat down with me and showed me the brew sheet for this beer, which was really cool of him. But yeah, really nice little brewery. Definitely cool to come and visit one of Matt's local breweries here in New Jersey and try one of the beers with him and things. So yeah, we had a really nice couple of hours here. So yeah, really great little place, very, very small scale. And the thing that I really enjoyed about it was that the beers are, you know, you get, because they're brewed on such a small scale, they still have a little bit of that kind of raw, home-brewed type character to them. And I think it's always really cool to come and visit the little kind of brew pubs and stuff. I'd probably still class this brewery as a brew pub, to be honest with you, rather than a kind of brewery, if that makes sense. But really cool to come and visit this place, and I'm very glad we made the trip. So yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. This was Man Skirt Brewing in Hackettstown in New Jersey, and I'll catch you guys in a little bit with this one. So yeah, I'll catch you guys in a little minute. So yeah, check out Man Skirt Brewing. I'll see you guys on the next Out and About video. Make sure you check out Matt at Massive Beer Reviews at some point very soon. So until then, Slàinte, Skål, cheers, and see you guys in the next review.